And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. All right, so let's take a look at this special investigation on the election in Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin to me, I think, is the most interesting aspect of a fraudulent election because we have a court ruling that says you must show your ID to vote in Wisconsin unless you're in this narrow category of people, and COVID doesn't count. So then you have this massive increase from between 35 and 40,000 people on average in an election who meet those qualifications to not verify their identity, who cast their ballot absentee, right? But that's now over 200,000 people in this last election. And even the Wisconsin Supreme Court looked at this and said, this is suspicious. You basically need to take a look at it. And it never was dealt with. And people will keep asking questions like, hey, we've got like 200,000 potentially illegitimate ballots here, and you only need a small fraction of those to flip the state of Wisconsin to Trump, okay? Just a small fraction of those. So there's still some real issues there. Well, something else has been happening there too. Hundreds of pages of emails and other documents obtained by Wisconsin Spotlight show that grant money from private left-leaning groups funded largely by Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg resulted in Democrat activists infiltrating the November presidential election in Wisconsin's 5 largest cities. Here's what the emails and Wisconsin Spotlight's investigation found. A former Democratic operative, Michael Spitzer Rubenstein, 3 names, served as a de facto elections administrator and had access to Green Bay's absentee ballots days before the election. So let me say this one more time. A former Democratic operative served as the de facto elections administrator and had access to Green Bay's absentee ballots days before the actual election happened. Spitzer Rubenstein asked Green Bay's clerk if he and his team members could help correct or, quote, cure absentee ballots like they did in Milwaukee. Green Bay's clerk grew increasingly frustrated with the takeover of her department by the Democrat mayor's staff and outside groups. Brown County Clerk Sandy Juneau said the contract stipulated that Spitzer Rubenstein, the Democrat activist, could have 4 of the 5 keys to the KI Center ballroom where ballots were stored and counted. So this one guy had 4 of the 5 keys to the ballot room before the election. Brown County's clerk said the city of Green Bay, quote, went rogue. Election law experts said the city illegally gave left-leaning groups authority over the election. And again, this is tied to the Mark Zuckerberg money that I have told you about many times on this show. I don't need to go into greater detail. Essentially, what we have is we have brand new information in Wisconsin that a Democratic activist was given access to ballots in Green Bay days before the election, and that the election officials, the county clerk specifically, felt like they were being overrun with activists. There's another update on this coming up next, 95.3 MNC. A minute or so. So in Wisconsin, lawmakers are actually holding a general election review hearing. They're doing that today following the news that a Democrat operative was given keys to the absentee ballot counting room days before the election. So that story that we were just talking about has now led to an actual general election review hearing in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin's still dealing with some very nefarious things happening in the election as more and more information continues to come out. They said the timeline just wasn't going to allow some of this stuff to happen. But as time goes on, more time is passing, more ability to investigate, get other people's stories vetted are actually going forward. Glory to you in your neighborhood. Buy a 3D printer or 2 or 3.